So hello and welcome to another Project Cars 2 setup guide. In today's video we'll be looking at the GTE version of the 488 at Daytona's road circuit. We'll be taking a fast lap around the circuit and then we'll be taking a look at all the things that I've done within the setup and the problems that I've had. We'll also divulge a little bit of stuff within the telemetry setting of the screen just to help things with the gear changes, and then we'll have a look at the replay. So let's get into the introduction. Here we are then in the 488, 0 to 60 in 3.6 seconds, 525 horsepower and a top speed of 190 miles per hour, although I'm struggling to hit that. Anyway, today's video is courtesy of Yammit, who left a lovely message on my YouTube channel saying that he'd struggled to find such a good channel. Well, that's obvious. But anyway, I asked him what car he might fancy me tackling next, and the GTE was one that came up, as it might again feature in next week's community event, which I believe is at the Nürburgring, but for some reason he wanted to delve into the Daytona road course, and I thought I'd oblige him. Now, I don't usually drive the GT, GT3 cars that much. They feature so heavily in the lobbies. I think it's often oversaturated with setups for GTEs and GT3 cars, but this one really did turn my head. I did a community event a long time ago at Monza where this car featured, and it was quite a struggle to get set up, and it didn't disappoint in this one really. So let's have a look at the car itself. The one that we're going to be driving is obviously the GTE version, and one of the massive problems with this car is the amount of snap oversteer on corner entry, especially under braking. It's been a huge nightmare to get this car set up to have a good balance under braking, and that was one of the key issues. But I'll also get into that as we look into the drive around the circuit and the setup. But for now, let's take a look at the lap itself around this massive circuit with a little bit of an infield technical section. But it was quite a challenge. But let's have a look at the lap and see what you think. So there's the lap, and if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do so before we get into this setup, and remember to hit that bell just for any future updates. So getting into the setup, guys, obviously we're going to be running the soft tyre. Probably would recommend using the hard tyre with this sort of track temperature if you're using the setup for a race. Probably about 5 5/10 of a second slower per lap, I think. Anyway, obviously we're going to run a slightly harder compound or slightly harder pressure at the front. And the brake pressure, this is going to be something that you're going to probably spend a bit of time on yourselves. It was very much a key feature in getting this car set up for me. And I run a very heavy brake pedal, but just trying to stop the car from locking out through the front end under heavy braking. The brake bias, the balance, getting that right was just something that's going to be very specific, I think, to anyone that runs pedals. It's just going to be really specific to your own setup. I did run 1 or 2 on the rear wing during this setup, and the longitudinal weight bias also played quite a key part in obviously trying to get the car to have some front end grip through the turning phase, but also not wanting to suffer with too much understeer, adding a lot more weight to the front end of the car. So it really has been a nightmare setting this car up, to be honest. Moving on to the casters, I just added 0.5 to the front, or to the casters, and the camber angle's 3 degrees. Ride height is as low as it goes on the front end, and the spring rate is as hard as it goes. On the rear end, I've done between 1.5 and 1.8 on the cambers, and just lifted that rear suspension quite a bit, really, just to aid in getting the car to be more responsive through the turning. Obviously, I'm running the McLaren GT3 wheel, which is quite nice in this car because it also runs a McLaren or a GT3 style rim. And the toe-in, just to get more responsiveness through the turning phases, negative at the front and positive at the rear. And the anti-roll bars are maxed out at the front and soft at the rear. Now the bump stops and everything, like I've mentioned time and time again, if you're running a hard setup suspension wise, you're going to want to change all those settings within the damper sections, so they're running slightly harder on the front as they are at the rear, and again always running a higher rebound as opposed to the bump. Slightly increase the transition to slow down the transition phase from hard to soft. Radiator is fully closed out, and the brake, engine braking also was a key feature in stopping this car from snapping during the oversteer phase on corner entry, and the gears will run through those during the drive around the circuit. As for the differential, I sometimes find that Project Cars 2 doesn't always offer you what you expect when it comes to changing some of these settings. So numerous times I've gone through the preload and the power ramp and the coast ramp, just trying to adjust things accordingly as to how I expect them to react, and sometimes they just really don't give me the same outcome as I expected. Anyway, there's numerous key sections of this setup that really have caused me to struggle, especially the cambers at the rear, the braking, again the differential and the gearing. There's just been numerous things that I've come back to time and time again, just trying to get the right balance on corner entry, and then the front end was locking up under heavy braking, and then from one lap to the next it would be just quite inconsistent. So it's been quite a struggle really to find the balance with this car and just really sort of dial in the setup. But I really would envy anyone that can do numerous laps at this circuit with a consistent pace. Okay, let's take a little drive around the circuit, and as you can see I've come into the telemetry HUD for this little exercise. Now you might notice during my fast lap that I was what we would generally call short shifting. Now if you look at the dashboard, you can see as the rev gauge goes up, you get like 2 yellow lights and then it goes into the red. Now primarily to get the best out of each gear, you want to be shifting just as it hits the second yellow light, almost as it goes into the first red light, but certainly don't hang on to those gears right into the top rev range. It's this car, I mean, I managed to set a 42.6 during my first exercise setting a lap around here, and as soon as I changed my gear settings to changing earlier through the gears, I instantly took about 800ths off my lap time just through gear changes alone. So it really is important to short shift through the gears, as you can see me doing here. And if we just look down at the telemetry itself, you'll just see in the bottom right hand corner you've got a HP and then a torque section. So I'll just run that first section again just so that you can see down the bottom corner here the HP and torque section that I was going on about. So as you accelerate up through the gears, you see it's hitting sort of a maximum of about 509 horsepower, and then you can see the torque again that goes to around 480, I think was the maximum. But as you hold on to each gear, you'll see that the horsepower and the torque setting gradually starts to drop. Now the reason behind the quick gear shift changing, as you can see as we'll power up through the gears here, you'll see like it reaches a maximum torque setting and then it starts to fade away. So the idea of changing gears sooner is so that it's always hitting as much torque as possible within the gear before changing up towards the next gear. And as you can see, as we hold on to the gear, the horsepower's dropping, the torque's dropping. So it'd be much more beneficial to change up into 6th gear and get that maximum torque. And that's why an early gear shift is more benefit to how this car performs. So let's move back onto the drive around the circuit with that gear change in mind. So as we approach this first corner, we're just going to be wanting to come out wide, but then just sort of braking around this point, trying to get on the dark line of the circuit, which is where most of the grip is. So it's a strange line into this first corner, and you're sort of heading towards the external corner or the outer edge of the circuit, and then you want to be like taking a sharp turn in and getting on the power nice and early. Use all the circuit on the exit as you go around that corner, and then just swinging the car across to the left hand side of the circuit, almost trying to settle the balance on the outside of the car itself, dropping down into first gear and then quickly accelerating up, using not all of the gear like I've mentioned, so quick shifting up through this section. And then we're going to go onto the left hand side of the circuit and stay nice and close to this left hand side. We want to sort of turn the car in and then start braking in a straight line for this corner, all the way down into 2nd gear, and really hug this inside corner. There's just so much more grip on the inside there, and then just powering the car out. It does have a little tendency to oversteer slightly there, but it does feel nice on the balance, braking just after the cones, and then down into 2nd gear, running some of that curb, and then just allowing the car to slingshot round a wider line round that corner. It is quite a strange corner, that one. And then obviously accelerating, quick shifting as mentioned, just at the 2 yellow lines. And then this is the last sort of tricky section to deal with. Just as the barrier on the right hand side changes colour, we're going to break down into 4th gear for this section, really hugging tightly on the right hand side here, not taking any more than the yellow curbs that we need to, and then accelerating all the way down this massive long straight. So obviously you'll see on the fast lap that I do that I've already had to do a lot to get the tyres in the right balance, really, I think, and also to get this maximum speed down here. We should be in 177 miles per hour as you hit the line. I'll just sort of run through a few key points. Obviously taking this wide line out and then bringing the car in again, heavy on the brake in a straight line, and then just getting on the power as soon as you can through this section. And then, as I said, running the car wide, and again bringing the car over to the left hand side, and just you're trying to get the car balanced really before you're getting on the brakes. First gear into that corner I do think is more benefit than staying in 2nd gear. It just seems to get a better exit, a better launch out of the corner. And again, this section here, we're going over all this bouncy stuff and braking about there, just getting the car in a straight line, and again just getting as tight as you can around this section. Obviously we might have hit some cones on this section on the previous lap, which clears the way to getting a nicer line through here. And again, just it's almost like slingshotting around that corner to get more speed on the exit. It really is a unique corner, I think. It's not one that you come across very often. And again, just this final section, I tend not to shift down into 3rd gear, although it feels like you need to. But yeah, that's the setup, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the lap, a bit of tuition, using that telemetry to your best advantage, and on to the replay. Thanks for watching as always, guys, and if you still haven't hit that subscribe button, please do so. Leave a comment, hit that thumbs up button, and if there's any cars or track combinations you'd like me to have a look at, or if there's anything else you'd want me to cover on the channel, please do leave a comment in the comment section. And as always, ciao for now.